to 25 feet above sea level. This is our flood wall. This wall surrounds the entire city of New Orleans. This is a flood gate. They close these when we have a hurricane coming in.
All right.
So you have no access to the river when hurricanes close. It's very, very time consuming to get these all closed. We have, last hurricane they closed 280 of them. And I wasn't even on the boat. So they're like every single block that's cut through has this big gate. This is the second layer of protection. During Hurricane Katrina, the water never came over the top of that levee.
Doesn't look super watertight, but I mean,
Well, it's better than nothing. Like,
yeah.
They have, they've had floods like in parts of the wall, like down in the Bywater, where, and I have friends who live down there, and they're like, if it floods really bad, it does seep through, but it's a seepage.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not this massive
Deluge.
flood, right?
Yeah.
But during Katrina, the water never came over the top of the levee. And if it had, we would have the second layer of protection. And you can see how much, how much further down we are as you go.
This protects this little piece of the city or the whole
city.
whole thing?
The whole city.
Yeah.
This dates to the 1980s, this section of the wall.
Okay.
And it's come up on the wall before?
No.
No, never. Well, it's like insurance. You only need it.
And the French Quarter was high and dry.
Okay.
It never flooded.
Yeah, the cab driver just told us that. He said, no, not this area, not this section.
It's actually high ground,
Yeah.
which is really crazy.
Right. So that was,
I had a guy on my tour. There are other companies that make beignets, but they're not the same. And this is the original Cafe Dumont, and there are different locations. There's even one at the airport, so you can get beignets.
That's right. I think I saw that there too.
bring them home.
But it's really a famous place. I love beignets with a coffee.
Sorry to interrupt. Could I trouble you for a light?
Yes.
Thank you so much. You're very kind.
Took me a minute to process what you're saying.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What? We couldn't bring a lighter on the plane, and we haven't been to a convenience store yet. So here we are.
Yeah, I actually think this is very good. I'm here for
So in the sky,
I just clipped this on and put it on video. I got a brand new memory card, and then I edit out later, I just keep like a clip of each filming, the highlight of it. I'll send you a link to the video I make.
Oh, cool.
I have a YouTube channel, shows all the stuff I do. Fishing in our little country mountain cabin, and silly stuff me and my guys do.
No TikTok, no.
I got big, long, boring videos, 45 minutes. I have some good Tennessee stuff, like street performers and things, because we try to hit as many cool places to drink in as we can. People tease me, like my friends. They're like, "Oh, Jay, you're getting a little heavy." I said, "This is bought and paid for. It's like $100,000 I'm walking around with." There's no loan on this. Good. I'm on a tour, but this is one of the cool spots I'll remember. All right.
A couple stories. So maybe get a couple stories in, and then we'll do some bar history. Okay. Yeah, so we're gonna get a loop around this one block, and then nice bars.
It looks, this is a park, right? So a lot of things look like they sit around. Yeah, I give you guys a little. Yeah.
This is maybe where I'll head to tomorrow. If you had to hang out for the day, would you come here or?
Yeah, I love Jackson's Place.
Yeah.
Because I'll be at the convention, so you're on your own.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
to see. We have a lot of trees here in the park today. But this is Jackson Square. This is the most iconic part of the entire city of New Orleans. This is the original city of New Orleans. When we were founded in 1718, this was laid out, not the park. This was a big muddy field. It was a public space, it was a military parade ground. Originally, there would have been barracks on both sides over here. There's been a church there since 1718. This is the latest iteration. St. Louis Cathedral dates the 1850s. We have Spanish colonial buildings on both sides that are identical. So Spanish colonial, that was their government buildings. And then we have these beautiful red brick buildings that are identical. And these are called the Pontalba Apartments.
What are they called?
Pontalba
Hotel.
Apartments. They're
Okay.
still apartments today. And it's a really cool story how these buildings got here. In the early Spanish era, a young fellow named Almonaster moves here, and he was a nobleman. He came from money, but he wanted to make a name for himself, and he became one of Louisiana's wealthiest men by buying property, putting buildings on it, and getting rent.
Oh.
Yeah, he got on a city council, so he's an important man working over here. He was also a philanthropist. He was so rich that
How rich was he?
he's one of the richest men in the state, which is a lot. When the first fire started right down there in 1788, it burned everything that was here to the ground.
Oh.
The second fire, 1794, burned half of this to the ground again. And Spain wasn't giving us money to rebuild our government buildings. But Almonaster, he's like, well, I need my office back.
Yeah.
And he basically gave Spain a loan to rebuild that building. So it dates to 1799.
Oh, wow.
And then as a gift to New Orleans, he helped rebuild the church that was here before this one. It was a Spanish colonial church. And he built the building on the other side right here that's identical to the other one. He built that as a gift to New Orleans.
Wow.
And
Where did he come from?
Spain.
Oh, okay.
Almonaster.
He's
This is the
Spanish.
Spanish era.
Almonaster.
Yes. And in exchange for this big investment that he made here in our city, the King of Spain allowed Almonaster to buy all the land on both sides of the square,
Wow.
which is huge. So now he...
At a bargain.
I mean, it was expensive land. He's able to buy it. Oh, thank you. I have so many layers on. I'm like...
You
I-
could always peel, and
I'm
that those
ready.
practically fit in your pocket if you want them to.
Oh, I was thinking of tying it because my butt's always
That works.
cold.
Yeah. I know. I like my jackets are long enough.
That's why. So I have a merino wool like undershirt on. And it's kind of hot.
It's funny because I was going to bring some sweaters. I was like, I wish I did.
I love this merino. The merino wool is amazing.
Yeah.
Because I worked on the river and I worked there in the
Here
winter
you go.
time. It's awful. Working
bet.
on the river, oh, it's so cold.
Yeah, it's always
You
windy.
guys don't get snow, right?
No, once a decade.
Yeah.
So he didn't build these red brick buildings. He married a local woman like the Spaniards did, right? And he had finally got married, had 2 kids. First baby girl died of yellow fever when she was 4. Second baby girl survived yellow fever. Her name is Michaela. Michaela Almonaster, y'all, was his only kid when he died when he was 70 years old. And that means she inherited everything.
Wow.
Because we are a Creole society, we're not American. The money, the land, the buildings, everything, it always goes to the blood.
Okay.
It doesn't go to the wife. You cannot marry into money.
Okay.
His wife had her own money, by the way, from her family. She was very well off herself. Sorry. Very annoying.
No, that's right. It's a good time for a pause.
And times were different back then. So 15, she's the wealthiest girl in Louisiana. And the thing about being wealthy, she had a big arranged marriage. So she was married off to the son of the Baron of Pontalba in France. And so he's about the same age as her, match made in heaven, and off they go to France. Her mom and she move over there. The mom's in Paris. Michaela's living at Chateau Mont-l'Evêque. That's about 40 miles outside of Paris. Settles in there to the chateau, the extended Pontalba family. Everything's great. No. A few months later, the Baron, her father-in-law, sues Michaela and her mother for more money. In their marriage contract, these arranged marriages, she had a big dowry. He thought that he was getting the land to the square, which didn't work. These buildings weren't here, by the way, but her father did have buildings here. And that wasn't part of the contract. So they sued him back, right?
Silly.
Yeah, they have lawyers in Paris, lawyers here in New
sure.
Orleans
They need
protecting
money.
Michaela's legacy.
Yeah.
10 years of lawsuits go on, and she was stuck in a situation, y'all. There is no divorce. There's no such thing, pretty much, in France in the 1800s because they're Catholic.
Right.
So she lives in a family with her husband, but 10 years of lawsuits. The Baron still hasn't gotten the land. He's sick of this, so that's when he decides to keep Michaela in confinement.
Oh, how terrible.
That's house arrest, y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah, she can't leave. She can't have visitors. People are not even allowed to talk to her. So very, very isolating. A year and a half goes by. She wasn't even allowed to see her own mother. And the mom is so desperate to get Michaela out of the situation that she gives the Baron all the land on this side of the square.
Wow.
She says, "You give me my daughter and my grandkids.
How terrible.
Give them back to me."
How terrible.
She was held for ransom.
Yeah, she was held for
Yeah,
ransom.
she was.
Wow.
And the grandkids too. So, right, he gets this, and she's finally out. She's living in Paris with her mom, and we think it's all over. Of course not. He wants that side. So there's more lawsuits, more drama, very greedy. And he's a bully, right? So 2 years more of this goes on. And for whatever reason, none of us will ever understand. Michaela decides to schedule a meeting with this guy. I think she wants to mend the fences for the sake of her children.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought she was going to shoot him.
And wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah.
And so,
Oh, you want to keep me in jail?
so she scheduled a meeting with him. She goes to his chateau. They do meet. Of course, nothing happens. So she decides to try again in the morning. So she spends the night. And she's getting ready for bed that night in the guest cottage. The Baron de Pontalba walks over there, right? Sends her maid away, goes into her bedroom, and shoots her 4 times, point blank.
Oh, no.
All the way around, man. Yeah, he shoots her 4 times. And it was point
The
blank.
daughter.
Yeah, his daughter, yeah. He shot, he
The
shot
girl
two-
that was imprisoned.
Yes.
Okay.
He shoots 2 fingers off of her left hand
Gosh.
and 4 bullets lodge in her left chest.
I'm assuming she dies.
So she's bleeding to death on the floor. He goes back to his chateau and kills himself. So now his son, right, her husband, is the new Baron, right? He's finally kind of dead.
Sounds like he
Yes.
lost his mind.
We don't know. Like
Yeah.
there was no suicide note. We have no idea. We have no idea what happened. She's bleeding to death on the floor, right? But she lives.
Oh, wow.
She lived. This is early 1800s. We
Wow,
don't
that's
know
incredible.
we don't know how she lived because surgeons didn't wash their hands back then,
Yeah.
and they fished 2 bullets out of her chest that night. So she survived with 2 bullets still inside of her. No antibiotics. She's a medical miracle.
She is.
She survives this attempted murder. She gets her divorce,
Wow. Hooray.
and she gets her land back.
Yeah.
But when it was all said and done, she was fighting lawsuits with that family for 35 years of her life before the final one was settled.
Wow.
So, in the year 1849, Michaela is now in her early 50s. She returns to New Orleans. She is the one who built these beautiful buildings.
Oh, wow.
She hired local architects, but she fired them both. She ended up hiring her own contractors because she absolutely had to have control. And she had 100% control of these buildings. She picked up the door hinges.
Wow.
And we can't prove it, but we think she's the architect. A lot of us think that she's the architect. But women weren't architects back then.
Right.
If we could prove it, by the way, it would make her America's first female architect by almost 40 years.
Wow.
So, she built these. She's not credited with being the designer of the buildings, but she is credited, though, with being the first person to bring cast iron to New Orleans. And her cast iron, y'all, is custom made.
It's beautiful.
She has more money than God.
Yeah.
And she wasn't even going to live here. She wasn't. This was an investment in her city. She wanted to finish her father's vision of the square. That he did this, he built this, she wanted to finish this. And it's absolutely stunning, y'all. Her cast iron. If you go closer, circle in the middle with 2 letters in it, an A and a P.
Yeah.
And that's her name, Esther Pontalba. And they look pretty much exactly the way they did when they were finished. They were designed as row houses. There was a massive renovation storefront in the 1970s, but other than that, this is what they look like. And they're absolutely stunning. And when she put this cast iron up, by the way, everybody in New Orleans lost their minds over this stuff. They were, the Baroness has it, have to have it.
Yeah, yeah.
And she finishes in 1850. In 1850, we're the wealthiest city in the country, right? The Civil War hadn't been fought yet. So we could have whatever we wanted. But cast iron is still so expensive. Everything had to be imported, like iron.
Important, right?
So for us
Yeah.
to make it here, that became a status symbol. And so the more cast iron you put on your building was a show of wealth.
Sure.
And I love that neighbors are competitive.
Right.
because that's why we have so much of it, right? Because they always got to.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's not just the quarter. It's the city. Anywhere of this era, like the 1850s to 1870s, pretty much, there's this explosion of cast iron in our city. And so that's something she is credited with. They are still apartment buildings today. Each apartment is 4 window bays. The apartment is the second and third floor.
So it's a multi-story
Yeah.
apartment. Wow,
Story.
it must be beautiful.
Are they a big
These are the
deal?
doors right here.
Are they a big deal to?
Yes.
To own.
You can't own them. They're owned by the state.
Oh,
Right.
Probably.
So 3,000 to 6,000 a month.
oh, it's not like daily, like 3-day or 4-day or something like that. You
And
can't.
there's a 5 to 10 year wait list to get on.
5 to 10.
Before the pandemic, it was a 20-year wait list.
For the pandemic. 20-year wait list before the pandemic.
I had a friend who lived here. I never got to meet her because she had that huge corner by Cafe Toulon.
Okay.
She waited 20 years to get it.
Wow.
She got on the list. Yeah, she got on the list in her 30s, and she just I guess she kind of forgot about it, and then they finally contacted her and said that was the one she wanted, and so she had to wait longer.
Wow. I'm sorry.
Very good dog. And for you, this is a mini museum. This 1850 house.
Oh, okay.
It looks like a little shop, and there is for $5 self-guided walking tour through the apartment upstairs, and it's decorated just the way we looked at 1850 when they were finished.
Oh, nice.
Just like a little step back in time. It takes like 30, 45 minutes of your time, which is interesting. You don't get to go on the balcony, but
Yeah.
you can see the original slave quarters and things like that. So I'm gonna have to do primary research myself. I actually made a friend at the Noah's Historic Collector, which is where all the archives are. So these doorways are original, but that stairwell is not. See that beautiful spiral staircase? Originally, this would go all the way into the courtyard, and there's an exterior stairwell on the back, and that was how they. And that was how they got into their houses originally. That staircase was.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Great to see you. Enjoy. Yeah, there's no elevator. So, like 3 months ago, I saw an 18-wheeler backed in down here in the middle. And there was a moving company moving people's furniture. And I looked down, I know that the stairwell's there, and these poor guys had this huge furniture, and they're just lugging it up the stairs. And I'm just like, oh my God, these guys are not getting paid enough.
Certainly not a good place to keep disabled.
They're like, there's no elevator. Literally here.
Back home, movers charge by the step, and then by difficulty, and then it's also by the hour.
Well, obviously,
So they might have been paid like really good.
Like, like a big moving company.
yeah.
These guys are real professionals. Everything was cracked.
Yeah.
They were like really new. But I still felt that.
Yeah.
These poor guys. And they would get all this up on the 3rd floor. So these are the cheap ones. So this one, like, the balcony is not on Jackson Square.
Okay.
So these are the $3,000 ones. They're like 1 bedroom or studio.
Kind of reasonable.
They don't have their own courtyard like these ones here in the back on the side.
Oh.
So there's only like I think there's only like 4 of those. So that's why you have to wait so long. So if you want the smallest one, you have to wait for somebody to move out.
Right.
But the thing is that everybody who's had this spot also had to wait for it.
Yeah.
So they know that somebody's waiting for it. They don't usually spend their whole life here. We did have a couple. We had an artist that I read about in the paper. I never met him. I didn't know him. I read about him in the paper. And when he died, he had lived here for like 20 years.
Okay.
So pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna come down a little bit more. We finally had some rain.
It's raining on a conversation. Yeah.
It seems like maybe like there was a homeowner
wow.
It rained
That's
every
unusual, right?
Very, very, just like the rest of the country.
Yeah.
The drought.
Yeah.
That's why the river's so low.
Yeah.
It was like that here, that never happens. Like they have, like the grass was brown. And I'm
yeah.
just like, that's just weird for us.
Yeah.
It does get cold, but it's usually pretty green.
Right.
But we had a ton of rain. So, yay.
Yeah, yeah.
All my chores were canceled, but that's okay. I don't want to be on the rain anyway.
Right, right.
People surprise me.
Yeah, I bet.
They're like, I'm only here for 2 days, so I'm gonna go out in the rain. I'm like, okay. Yeah.
Bring your umbrella.
Oh, I have my galoshes on. Like I have my raincoat and my umbrella. Like I'm set, and these poor people are out with their little tiny umbrellas.
Yeah.
And I have my giant umbrella.
Wind's hitting them sideways.
I have
Yeah,
a
and the
super
rain's coming
duper,
this way. Yeah, exactly.
like a rain one.
I'm like, I'm ready. I don't know.
I could get lost in the bookshop for a minute. There's plenty of stuff to do.
There's a lot.
Oh yes, Dauphine Street Books is great. This is not Dauphine Street.
Oh,
So he moved locations to be closer to the square, which is a much better location, but he kept the name, which is very confusing.
Yeah.
This is Charter Street,
Okay.
and it's Dauphine Street Books. So I just picked this spot because I think it might kind of sort of be a little bit out of the wind. But it doesn't really matter where I talk about what I'm going to talk about, which is slavery.
okay.
Because to be honest, every single neighborhood here in New Orleans had its own slave auction site. The French Quarter, very early days, they actually were on this side of the square, and
You
where
said slave
Muriel's
auction,
is.
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
like an auction. Like they put them in the middle on a pedestal, and everybody would be around. And we had them downtown, we had them uptown, we had them every neighborhood. So anywhere you go, you can, they're around,
It's,
right?
it's so odd for us because being from the Northeast, that
Right.
has been outlawed way.
Way.
So we have really no remnants.
So we're gonna walk and talk. The wind does come up. Yeah, that's the wind.
Ciao. Giacomino. Gene Giacomino. Oh.
It looks old.
So I'm noticing these everywhere, and I'm sure it doesn't have such an exciting thing to it. What are those a cover to? Just
I don't know.
Huh.
These are termite traps.
Oh.
See? So they monitor termite activity because we have Formosan termites. And even though the break allowance is also wood. So that could be devastating. I've seen them, they have this little key and they go.
Oh yeah, no.
Is it termite trap?
Yeah, you. Pardon us, folks.
Did you hear the shutters before?
No, what are the
Hurricanes.
shutters? Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I said
All
that.
right.
So many shots.
Now, just because all the shutters are closed, that doesn't mean that those are vacant.
Probably. Probably.
Oh, probably are vacant.
Yeah.
Oh.
So we're gonna just stand right here.
Okay.
Take a look at this building.
All right.
It'll this can kind of sort of come into play. So, but to go back on, and slavery is a very difficult topic, but I'm not one of these tour guys that just glosses that stuff over. They deserve their due, for sure. And the thing about Louisiana is we had a very distinct system of slavery here. Because we were founded by the French, we're not British. And the French in 1724 adopted something, so that's right after we were founded, adopted something called the Black Code. And the Black Code was a set of laws that the French had designed about 50 or 60 years prior to this for them to manage slavery in the French Caribbean islands. Because they didn't have slaves in France, did they?
No.
But they did once they had land here,
Right.
right? For things like sugar and stuff like this.
Yeah.
So they already had slaves. They were using this, and so this set of laws to manage this. And the Black Code is very, very, very interesting. And the thing about the French and then the Spanish is they're fairly honorable people. If that is the law, then they will obey the law.
Right.
You know, they're always dueling each other.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of like mentality that we have going on here. Because people are like, well, why did they just? They're going to obey the law.
Right.
That's how they are as a people. So the Black Code said two really interesting ones. Article number 2 said that all slaves had to be Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're an African person, right, auctioned off into slavery here in Louisiana, you don't speak the language when you first come here, of course. And that first Sunday, your owner takes you to church with him, you're baptized, and then you go to church every Sunday for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it went down.
Oh, wow.
Okay, it did. That is
Forced
how
religion.
they were forced into it. Article number 6, though, is the really interesting one, because Article number 6 said that no slave shall labor on Sundays. Now, definitely during harvest, I'm sure it was not enforced. Like, it probably wasn't enforced, but in general, because these people obey the law, the slaves actually did not work on Sundays. So, way back in the days when that church was there, like the first church was there, she's twiddling around. Good dog. They were going to that church and they were hanging out in that big field that used to be there, right? That big public space. And the early French colonists didn't really like that. They were like, you know, because they had like thousands of slaves like living in this area by then, and they were just like, no, we don't want you here. This is our public space. And they told the slaves, you guys can go to the back of town.
I know.
Well, the back of town's Rampart Street. There was nothing past there, but you know, trees and swamps and stuff. And so every Sunday, the slaves went out there and cleared the land for themselves. And they basically created for themselves a beautiful park. And they kept the beautiful magnolia and oak trees, and they even had their own market there every Sunday because they had to grow their own food that they could grow or make, or things that they could make by hand. They would trade and barter with each other every Sunday. That eventually became known as Congo Square.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's still there today.
Congo Square.
It's still there today, part of it.
That was not an auction site, right?
No,
Okay.
that was their public space,
Okay.
so to say. And it's organic, like it just grew organically. It was on a planned public space. The French just said, you guys just go over there. We don't care what you do, just not here.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so,
They might have been like, fine, that's ours?
yeah,
Okay, we're going to make it ours.
yeah, and they did.
Yeah.
They really, really, really did. And it was public space forever because it's still there.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it's never not been a public space. Not once in the history of the city has that not been a public space. Of what's left of it.
Good.
It's just really incredible.
Yeah.
I think that oak tree that's there is like 400 years old or something.
Wow.
Which for downtown America is really saying something. That a tree could live that long in
Right,
downtown
right.
America, right? So it's different, right? But you remember how I said how bad it was here in the 1720s and like 1730s? We saw the horrible economy, everybody's dying.
Yes,
The French
it
came up
was.
with this really interesting system. They said, and it wasn't necessarily law, but this was what was done in practice. They said we need to kind of kickstart our economy a little bit. So this is what they said: if you are a skilled slave worker, which is what, 15%, maybe 10% of their slaves have a skill of some sort. Right, like you can make food, grow food,
Right.
do hair, you're a nurse, or you can shoe horses, or
Maybe even
build
something like a
furniture,
seamstress
something
or
like
something.
this. Yes,
Mhm.
yeah, seamstress, that's what they want. There was all kinds of skills. So if you were a skilled slave, the French said, with your owner's permission, we are going to allow you to go out in the city and make money for yourself. But by law, no slave can have cash. So what happened is if you guys went out and worked on your Sundays or whatever your owner wanted to let you out, right? You had to go back home at the end of your working day and give him your money. And then this guy brings out his business ledger. First column is his cut. They usually take about 50% of the slave's earnings that day. And then he would write down, he actually took all of it, and then would write down what was left over for the slave. But he's keeping a tally. Why would they even do this? Because after 10, 15 years of that extra labor that you're doing, you could then go to court and prove that you'd earned enough money to buy your freedom. Yes, and here in Louisiana, they call themselves the free people of color.
Okay.
So this is very unique, right?
Yeah.
And this went on. It wasn't super common, but it did happen.
Yeah.
The Spanish come in. Remember, I said that they were really incredibly hands off, y'all. The Spanish. They just came in. They just wanted to say they make money. The Black Code. They never had anything like that in all the hundreds of years that they had slaves,
Right.
But they didn't get rid of it. They did not. They just made some changes to it because they also had their own ideas about this self-purchase, and they made it into law. And so the free people's population boomed
Right.
under the Spanish because then it was law. And
So
what
it was
did I
actually
say?
better for them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And and it was just more, and we're growing, of course, as a city as well. So
Yeah.
we're becoming more and more populous, more and more slaves, which means more and more free people. And the free people of color had their own set of laws. And this is the really interesting part about Louisiana history, because by law, the free people of color had every single civil right as the wealthy white Creoles, besides three major things. They could not vote, could not have or hold political office, and they could not marry a white person. What they could buy property, start a business, and take you to court. And they did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they became our middle class. By the
Oh,
time we become
interesting.
American, right? So under the French, we had 99 free people of color.
Right.
When we become Spanish. Under the Spanish era, when we become American, we now have 1,600 free people of color in the city of New Orleans. And they owned, in 1803, 1/3 of the French Quarter.
Oh, wow.
This is just for New Orleans, not the rest of Louisiana. Oh, the
All of
whole state.
Louisiana.
Okay.
And they moved out from here. So
Yeah.
in 1803, that was the population here, which was about 15 to 20% of the population, which is pretty high.
Yeah.
It was free people. And a lot of them had left. So if you go to the Cane River area of Louisiana, which is like Natchitoches, Louisiana, there's a book called Cane River. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's
Is
fascinating.
it C-A-I-N-E?
Cane, like sugar cane.
Oh,
Oh.
okay.
And there was, they're on a tributary, there's all these plantations on a tributary of the Mississippi River, and Cane River was black-owned plantations.
Oh, interesting. I've never heard
Because
of that.
they considered, it's a wonderful book. It was an Oprah Book of the Month pick.
Yeah.
And I happened to see it at Barnes & Noble, whatever, and I was like, oh, it's
called the Cane
Louisiana.
River?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's all Louisiana. This lady was writing like a memoir of her family's history, and she was from like New York or Virginia or somewhere,
Uh-huh.
and she had no idea that she was descended from these people that owned slaves.
Wow.
That her ancestors who were black owned slaves.
Right.
And that's a dirty secret of their history. We
Interesting.
think maybe like 30% of them owned slaves.
Okay.
Some of them would have slaves in order to free them. Most of them obviously didn't own slaves because that's where they had come from.
Right.
But for a lot of them, these are Creoles of color.
Oh, some of the free people had their own
Had
slaves.
their own
Yes.
slaves.
Oh, okay.
Yes. When I said black-owned plantations,
Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about. like
Right.
these people.
Yeah, no, I understood
they had,
that.
and they were small. They were small plantations. They only had like 60 slaves.
Yeah.
Some of the larger ones,
And thousands of acres.
they would have. There's plantations that had 200 slaves, 300 slaves for one family.
Must be big.
They were huge.
plantations, Yeah.
We're talking 6,000 to 10,000 acres in sugar cane of the 20,000 land that they owned. Acres.
So if you own land, you're growing sugar cane.
Oh yeah,
So that's
much.
it. No
Unless you're
sense
way up
growing
north.
anything else. Okay.
that's where you get cotton in today, like soybeans and stuff like that.
Oh,
but
okay.
here in the southern Louisiana, it's all sugar.
I guess it likes growing in boggy, wet stuff.
And today rice. We grow a lot of rice.
Oh, rice,
because
yeah.
We're very wet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So the history here is very, very different, right? And yeah, yeah. And I said to stop here, which is not where I usually stop. You see this building here?
Yeah.
Okay. And you see the courtyard?
Yeah.
See this narrow pink building right here?
Mm-hmm.
That's the slave quarters.
So quarters.
So they lived in the second floor of what today I don't know what that is.
And
Or-
probably connected to this family here.
Yeah.
That's the main house, and that's the slave quarters, and then they have like a common courtyard.
And then they have a common court. Well, and then the first floor would, back in the day, would have been the kitchen would have been on the first floor, and the stables for the horses and things like that. So the slaves would have lived upstairs. They did not have common area. The
Oh.
slaves were only allowed into certain parts of the house, or only during certain times of
Yeah.
the day. For some of the larger houses I've been into, they have a separate staircase
Yeah.
for the enslaved people to use. They were not allowed to use the main staircase in the house.
We have some big old houses in the Northeast where there's back staircase to the main staircase.
Yes. So I walking down the street, and that's where it's so bad. Those are the dependencies. Officers,
Yeah,
firefighters.
firemen, brotherhood. Yeah.
Like, isn't that like is that such a it's like I hate to say but it's still true today.
It is, yeah.
Like today, it's just handed down from generation to
Yeah.
generation. Well, my father, my great grandfather was a firefighter.
Oh, the Irish
so-
still like being policemen and firemen around
Yes,
here?
just like in New
Here.
York and Boston.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
They're
There too.
still the same in New York. All Irish names,
Yeah.
captains, and then their sons and their
Yeah. Yeah.
grandsons.
They were
yeah.
glad to put the shovel down. I'll put a fire out and I'll rough a criminal
Yeah.
up. That sounds better than digging a ditch.
I had no idea the Irish came down here. I
Yes,
thought it
they
was mainly
came everywhere there was a port.
Yeah,
So any port that they could have access to,
yeah.
they ended up coming in New Orleans, which is why we have large waves of immigrants because we're such a large port city.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted to, I can talk a little bit about voodoo while we're here.
It's an important part of the history.
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
We're often associated with the practice of voodoo here in New Orleans, and a lot of people figure somehow or another we got it because the Haitians brought it. which was a big wave.
Okay.
Okay.
Speaking of big wave of immigrants, during the Haitian Revolution, when the slaves did their uprising, right, created their own country, we actually had about 9,000 Haitians move into New Orleans.
That would have been 1800s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's so funny about that, I find it incredibly ironic, because the people that fled Haiti were those with the money.
Really?
They wanted to keep their slaves.
Yeah.
So they took all their slaves and they said, we're moving to New Orleans where slavery is still legal.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't have to deal with the slave rebellion anymore. And they started coming in 1804,
Toussaint.
which is right after we become American. Our population almost doubled in size of French-speaking Catholic Creoles. I laugh because I think this is hysterical. Because when the Americans got here, they were just like, wow.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like we already had enough of the Catholic Creoles, and then we have 9,000 more
That's a
move in.
lot.
They really did have their hands full.
Yeah.
Now the Haitians they have their own voodoo. They may have influenced the way it was being practiced here, but ours is our own.
Okay.
It's actually called New Orleans voodoo or Louisiana voodoo. And we both have them, Haiti and New Orleans, because of the Black Code. So what was happening here, same thing that happened over there. So let's say here in the city, they were going to church, you know, the big, where the cathedral is
Yeah.
today. So in the early 1700s, right, they're going to church and practicing Catholicism because they had to. Then they're going out to Congo Square every Sunday and practicing traditional African beliefs,
Right.
right? And a lot of the Africans who were, you know, forced to come here were from the northwest coast of Africa, which is known as the slave coast,
Yes.
which is like Cote d'Ivoire, Benin, Togo. There is a
Senegal.
religion. Senegal
Or
is near
Ghana?
there.
No, that would be middle.
So my African geography is not perfect, but it's right there on the northwest coast, and they're all like these teeny tiny countries,
Yeah. Benin.
right? Benin,
Yeah.
Togo. So Mali is
Togo.
over here, yes. And there's a religion practiced there today, right now, called voodoo,
Okay.
and a lot of anthropologists believe it's been practiced there for about 5,000
Oh,
years.
wow.
So it's a very old, very changeable, very adaptable religion. It's not codified in any way. It's always adapting. But that's obviously one of the roots of the religion here. We also have a lot of Africans from the Congo region, which is why it was called Congo Square.
Oh, sorry.
And they also have their own beliefs. And what happened is called syncretism. And that's a fancy word anthropologists use to mean the mixing of religions, two or more, right? They just mix them up to create a new one. And that's what voodoo is. And that's why they're similar to each other, Haitian and New Orleans voodoo, but they're not the same.
Right.
Another one of these religions, which is almost very similar but not the same, is Santeria,
Santeria, yeah.
which is practiced in Cuba,
Right.
And Candomblé, which is practiced in Brazil.
What's it called?
Candomblé,
Candomblé.
they have the same roots with this mixture of African and Catholicism.
Okay.
And they really just kind of smashed them together.
Yeah.
And it didn't take long.
Right.
Like it just kind of happened, and it happened all over the New World. So you might be thinking that there's no way an African can have anything in common with a Catholic, but you're wrong. They have two major things in common, big things. Number one, all of these Africans believe in one God. They're monotheistic. So when they learn about their biblical God, they learn the language, right? And they're like, oh, God.
That's who God is.
Yeah.
No, they think, I already know God.
Yeah.
They know God themselves already. They already have their own understanding of God. Now they'll listen to it because they have to, right? But it's like, I know God.
Do they think
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
the same God? Then two different people just calling it the same.
Different names.
Yeah.
Okay.
Different
Yes.
cultures. Right.
So they're all in agreement.
Yes. So they're like, oh, cool. I mean, that was the idea. And then the other big thing they had in common is a lot of these Africans would pray to these higher spirits called the Loi. And you pray to different Loi for different things. For health in your family or for business
like
success.
saints.
And that's exactly what they thought. They said, well, this saint is kind of sort of like this higher spirit that
Yeah.
we pray to. So they took a statue of that Catholic saint and put it on their altar and prayed to that saint instead.
And they said he's so and so.
Right.
Yeah. So this is the same thing.
Or for whatever he is, like the
Yeah.
saint of travel or the saint
Right.
of healing. Or,
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now, so they did have these things in common. They also loved the pageantry, music, mysticism of the Catholic Church. A lot of these things they identified with.
Yeah.
But there were big differences. All these Africans were animistic, which means they believe in the spirits of nature.
Right.
So they kept that part, like, of their religion, kind of alive. But in the end, the whole purpose of practicing voodoo was to worship God every day in your life and to do good things for your community. That's
Not
it.
to put evil curses on people.
No,
I
that
don't know why
is
that.
completely made up by Hollywood.
Is it really?
And it's very interesting. How old is cinema history? 1920s? Silent
Yeah.
films?
Yeah.
It started as early as the 1920s. By the 1940s, Hollywood producers were taking voodoo rituals, which is something they did not understand or care to understand,
Right.
and using it very specifically in horror movies
Right.
to make people afraid
Right.
of black people.
Oh God.
You know, it was just, it was a
Oh,
trope.
they're gonna put a curse on me. Yeah.
And it's still going on today. So this whole idea of curses, if you went here, now, Voodoo Authentica, by the way, is my favorite voodoo shop.
This is a voodoo shop.
Yeah, Voodoo Authentica. And it's my favorite because it's authentic. It's also conveniently located for me to tell tourists to go to. There's another one that I actually do like as well, but I love the people that work here. These people actually practice voodoo, the employees.
Right.
And they've been open for 25 years, y'all. And they consider themselves, the workers, very clearly as cultural ambassadors of their religion. They want you to come in and ask them stupid questions.
Right.
They'd rather people come in and learn about it from themselves than to watch movies.
And
There's
maybe
no
clear
stupid
up,
questions, just stupid answers.
or clear up the misnomer that voodoo is bad.
Yes. And so if I
black
came
magic.
here and I said, I know the high priest, if I said, hey, man, there's $100. Can you put a curse on my neighbor for me? He'd be like, no. He already
Wouldn't
knows
even
it.
know how.
He knows that I know better. But he'd be like, no, we don't do that here.
Yeah.
We don't do that. And then
Well, that's just like a practical black magic. That's
Yes.
like a whole nother.
and that's what he would say.
thing.
He would say, okay, Yvonne, don't go down to the witchcraft shop. And go to the first shop next. In Salem. And his second shop is here.
Okay.
I have met him. He is here every once in a while, but he mostly is in Salem. But yeah, he's published a bunch of books.
I just heard a whole thing about a man, he's a demonologist.
Plus, it's fun tourist stuff too.
Talking about necromancy,
And
and,
so- and
he's
there's-
like, don't do it.
Yeah, don't do it. So yeah, that guy just outright. He's like, yeah, I'm a necromancer. I'm just like, okay, I didn't need to know that.
Right.
Because I was talking to one day, because I'm a tour guide, and I'm like, oh, other people's business, because I want to know.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I remember when Hex opened, I was like, oh yeah, what's this? What's going on?
Right.
You know, they do have a cool book selection of different kinds of subjects. They sell books at Voodoo Authentica, but they're like a very small selection. They're very curated.
Okay.
Like they only sell us books that they approve of.
Right, right.
So this house, check it out. It's
Wow.
very cool, right?
Yeah.
Now it has a massive renovation going on. This is the only surviving example in the French Quarter of French colonial residential architecture.
Okay.
This is what the French houses would have looked like back in the 1700s. This actually
Really cool.
it partially burned down in 1788 in the first
Yeah.
fire, and they rebuilt it starting the next day. So this building dates to 1788, which for America is pretty old.
Were the fires just
Cahiers
accident?
de
They
Maine.
weren't anything on purpose, right?
No.
No shootings, no wars.
No. Yeah, a candle blew over in the wind, came in and knocked a candle over, and the curtains caught on fire. And the other one was kids playing with fire,
Oh.
and they were by the stables where the hay is.
Yeah.
And just there goes-
Foof.
There goes half New Orleans.
And there was a lot of things built with wood, so things would
And
have
see-
just gone up, right?
Exactly. You see, now the bottom is brick, so they were always raised up off the ground because of flooding. But most of that's made out of wood, exactly. And back in the day, it probably would have been set back from the street. It would have had a big yard, big backyard, garden, pigs, chickens even. The slave quarters would have been to the back again, a separate building. But that's what the whole city would have looked like. So it would have looked more like the countryside.
Right.
Right? But after the second fire, Spain had the king of Spain, the crown, had been giving us millions of dollars to rebuild our city.
Yeah.
And it was one of the few times Spain put its foot down. They were like, no, you can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
No, this is not okay.
They should have put
Yeah.
some antique firehouses in to protect themselves.
The only way in the 1700s, you know what they put out fires?
Uh-uh.
Bucket brigade
Oh.
from the river.
From the river.
Yeah.
So if you
So-
can't get 500 people together real fast, you're burning down.
They had to basically pick which buildings to save. So they picked like the orphanages, the hospitals,
Yeah.
like the government buildings didn't burn down. They didn't even, when those burned down, the fire started half a block away. And it was too close for them to try to save the government buildings. But I know.
I feel like they would have tried to save the government
Yes,
buildings
I-
no matter
I-
what.
I think they would have,
and
but
forget the orphanage, you know.
it was too close. The second one, they were able to stop it before it got halfway through the square, and then they were able to stop it.
Bucket Brigade. I wish there was any kind of film of them running a
Wouldn't that be
bucket brigade
great?
trying to put something out.
These are cool, the candles. Is it like
That's just they're just left over. We have a lot of gas,
gas?
and
They look nice.
they still work. They're in still working order, and so they just leave them.
I imagine they look beautiful.
Instead of pulling the electric through it, they're like, let's just use it.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, and it's not expensive
Uh-huh.
generally. So after these two fires, Spain was like, okay, this has got to stop, and they drafted a set of building code laws, and they've been doing this colonial thing for a long time.
Yeah.
Right? And they're like, this is what we're going to do from now on. Not only did they write the laws, they did enforce the laws. They almost had a civil war on their hands, by the way. I mean, a mutiny by the locals. This was because the French were used to doing things their way.
Yeah.
And the thing about the French is they can be stubborn culturally. And it's not that they don't like change, it's they like to resist change.
They wanted French?
Yes, and so I've always been doing this. Why can't I keep building my building like this? Because it burns down, honey. So, you know.
Yeah.
Learned that already?
So they said, by law, this came from the king, right? From now on, you have to make your buildings out of brick. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Of the 2 fires,
Oh.
only 5 buildings survived both fires. That's it. In the first quarter. This is one of them. Right? Just didn't happen to burn down the second fire. They said all the other buildings were made out of brick. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
And then this is the big change. This is what completely changed the entire look at the city. They said, make out of brick. Then you have to bring your building all the way up to the sidewalk. So if you look down our streets, what do you see? They all line up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now this street's not a great example, but when we go further this way, you're going to see a lot of this. They also said, when possible, when you rebuild, your house is going to be flush, touching next door to its neighbor. And there was a reason for this, because like down here, and here we only have the green one and the red one. You see how they touch? They have a shared wall. When you have 5 or 6 buildings or more, all made out of brick, all touching, this is a firewall.
Okay.
So something on that block catches fire as it burns this way, it's going to hit that row of brick buildings and
It's
stop,
done. Yeah.
right? And that's why it looks the way it does.
Fire? Serious?
And then the third major thing is you have to have a slate roof. Anything fireproof, slate, Spanish red tile, something like this. That slate up there, it's actually brand new on the corner up there. But if you walk in the French Quarter, you'll see a lot of, almost everything here is slate.
Slate.
There are some exceptions, but it's going to be slate because it's fireproof.
The Spanish clay.
Spanish red tile,
Oh yeah, yeah.
Do they call it Spanish red tile because it's a style?
yes.
Okay.
But
They're like
from
curved,
here,
they're cupped.
Historically, that's what's, they haven't put it up yet. We just put that up. They usually see where the roof goes like this.
Yeah.
They usually have Spanish red tile down that seam.
Okay.
The
And
ridge
you'll
cap.
see a lot of that. And you can't really see it from here.
So when embers go flying, they just land on the slate and fizzle out.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
because they're fireproof.
Yeah.
I know, right? And it works.
But you know, that was a serious.
Nothing burnt down again.
Well, we've lost individual buildings to
Yeah.
fire. There's still a lot of wood inside it here.
Yeah.
A lot of wood, but the whole most of it survives.
It stays to where it happened.
Yeah. Now the second part of French Quarter architecture here is that it is hot most of the year.
Yeah.
Unlike today. Right? And when dealing with the heat before air conditioning, that was like the 1940s, kind of when it really started like coming into like more people had air conditioning. By the way, the first air conditioned street in New Orleans was Bourbon Street.
Was that?
Don't you know?
When,
Of course
and
it
when
was.
would you say in the 40s? Did you say?
1930s. They
Oh,
had air
wow.
conditioning some
Wow.
places in their quarter. Yeah.
Like
when
like
it was-
rudimentary stuff with fans and blocks of ice or
I
something.
don't remember how
Okay.
it was, but Bourbon Street was the first. They're always kind of like the ones that do things first. But before this, you're dealing with 8 months of hot, and it gets really hot with the humidity here. Heat index 114,
I would imagine.
110. So no matter when you build your buildings here before air conditioning, you're going to have high ceilings. So no matter the style of architecture you see, right? High ceilings.
Yeah.
High, 14, even more, 18, 20. And this is because heat rises. That's also why you see these really tall doors and windows. And they're going to be all the way down this side, all the way down that side. On the courtyard side, so these are the big yards. They did their courtyards. The Spanish and French both love courtyards. So that was something that they shared. And the courtyard side, you open up all your doors and windows to try to catch a breeze. To get cross ventilation.
Yeah.
And then they slept in
So this must be actually frigid for New Orleans right now.
It gets colder.
Really?
We get wind chill in the 20s
Wow.
in January. When I said
goodness.
Chicago, it doesn't last long. It's like 2 weeks of that kind of cold, and it's usually like that cold Arctic air like dips
Yeah.
down.
Yeah,
here,
it's
and then
gotta
it
really dip.
recedes and then dips, but it's maybe 2 weeks total.
Okay.
But yeah, wind chill in the 20s.
Wow.
It doesn't usually freeze because it's too humid.
Right.
Yeah. But in the summer, you want to deal with the heat. That's also, of course, why we have the beautiful balconies.
Yeah.
everywhere. It's an extension of your living space.
Right.
And the third
Makes
part
sense.
about French Quarter architecture, and my favorite part, is that miraculously, most of it's preserved.
Yeah.
We preserve the French Quarter. And this
Right.
is a miracle because Americans like to do what?
We renovate everything. Tear it down.
Tear it
Put up a
down.
new building.
Yes, new things, big things, pretty things, shiny things.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, shiny things
Right.
like high rises.
Yeah.
You know, and
Not
office
unfortunate.
buildings. And this is a miracle that we preserve
Yeah.
this. So we're going to go fast forward quite a bit in time. By 1900, the French Quarter was a completely different neighborhood. All the wealthy folks had kind of moved out to better neighborhoods. It was very cheap rent. It was a dangerous neighborhood. A lot of bars, brothels, gambling halls, and
Kind of like a red light
It was-
district. Like,
no, not quite. And then it was full of immigrants, Italians. Poor Italians. They had a horrible time here.
did they?
Oh yes, just like they did everywhere.
Is
I
it the
think.
way they were treated?
They were dock workers, but they kind of overtook the French Quarter. All the people that moved out, it was cheap rent. They all
Right.
worked on the river, so they're like, I guess we'll live here. This neighborhood, nobody wants to live here, so it's ours now. 7,000 Italians, Sicilians, all of them lived in the French Quarter.
All Sicilian.
All Sicilian. All of them.
They
By the
yeah,
1920s,
they let you stay with their own.
yeah.
people.
We had other Italians, but they went to other places of Louisiana. But we had 7,000 Sicilians here, and this actually was not known as the French Quarter. In the 1920s, this was known as Little Palermo.
Oh,
Wow.
The first language you would have heard spoken on these streets in 1920 would have been Italian.
Did any Italian restaurants still make it and stay here?
We have Italian families that run restaurants, but not continuously.
Not like-
Besides,
okay.
well, Napoleon House. Nope, like that's it
Okay.
that I know of. We have Mandina's, but it's not in the quarter. We have.
I wonder why the
Irene's.
Italians gave
Maybe-
that up.
Maybe Irene's. I know they all left the French Quarter.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I don't know the whole story. I know a little bit
Maybe it wasn't good times.
because there was this whole resurgence, which I'm getting to. There was a whole resurgence of the French Quarter, and then they had to go find other cheap rent.
Yeah.
So, but they were, so it's all full of immigrants. It's a dangerous neighborhood. The Americans were like, we're just going to tear it down. Because they were well in power by then, in
Yeah,
the 1900s,
right.
right? And that was the idea. They were like, we'll just tear it down and build
The
new.
Gilded Age. Yeah.
And so they were like, yeah, that's right. And there were a lot of Americans coming down here and tearing down historic buildings like this and building big wooden buildings like that one was painted.
Oh wow.
That dates to the 1890s, right? They were tearing down all of this corner of the French Quarter. From this corner that way is residential, most of it. And so the Americans are coming down here, tearing down these historic buildings because they were in bad shape and building new. And on top of this, the Americans really were working politically. So what they did is you go down Royal Street or Charter Street, take your pick. You go 5 blocks this way. You're gonna run right into this massive white stone and marble building. That's Louisiana State Supreme Court of Appeals. It's massive. You won't miss it.
Okay.
You'll be walking along, you're gonna see it. And you'll be walking along tomorrow, so you'll be like, oh, that's what she's talking about. The American government, right, that was here in Louisiana, tore down the entire city block to build that courthouse.
Wow.
It used to look like this.
Oh.
It really
Oh.
did. It was stunning. We have pictures of it. Because that's, it was finished in 1910.
Okay.
When that courthouse went up, there were just enough people in New Orleans, in the quarter, who loved this. They thought the architecture was beautiful. They wanted to preserve it. So starting in 1910, 1911, right about there, they started a grassroots effort to lobby not only our federal government, but our state government to protect the French Quarter neighborhood.
Nice.
And they were finally successful in 1937.
Wow. Yeah, that is a long
In
time.
1937, we got the designation National Historic District. National. Second one in our history. The oldest is Charleston.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Theirs was 1935. I could have swore it was New Orleans.
Yeah.
But they beat us by 2 years.
Okay.
In 1937, not only did we get this, which means by law, you cannot tear a building down, no matter what. No matter what's wrong with it.
You can just fix it.
You gotta just fix it.
Yeah.
Not only did they have this, the state government, Louisiana, created the Vieux Carré Commission. Vieux Carré means old square in French. This is the old square. The Vieux Carré Commission is a public-private entity, so to say, that has state mandate law behind it today. They are still around. The Vieux Carré Commission tells you if you own this building and you want to change anything that touches the air, or you have hurricane damage and you got to fix anything that touches the air, it has to be historically accurate to the year it was built,
Even the color?
even the color.
Oh boy.
You can change the color, but it has to be an approved
Okay.
color. And we never had an approved color list until 2022.
Wow. As if people were starting to use freaky
Can you
colors.
imagine? Oh,
Wow.
no, but see, y'all, they only meet like 4 times a year. So you get all your paperwork in, and you're like, I want to paint it beige, and they'll be like, no, and then you have to wait.
So things don't get painted a lot.
No, but today they have an approved list. How
Oh,
long did that
okay.
take?
Oh, it can be
Since
picked
1937.
from this list?
Yes, it's picked from this list.
So before that, it was just easier to let the paint peel and chip.
You just it had to be approved. And most people
Yeah.
would just paint it the same color. Cause it was
Oh,
easier that
okay.
way.
Yeah, right.
You could do it the same
Like
color.
you can change, but
Uh-huh.
it's a process. And like if you have, like you'll see as you go on around the block, it's a pink building. It's this really cool like coral color.
Yes,
And
that's a historic color.
Historically approved, and there's one right across the street. But if you had one next door, they probably would say no. Because you don't want two pink buildings next to each other.
Mr. Parsons' house. I'm going to work at a historic house. I sand and finish floors and painting and things. And I said, wow, I really like that color. He goes, yeah, it's a pink salmon. It's a historic color. It's on the ledger of.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is but the Food Correct Commission has its own approved list.
Okay.
Very specific to this neighborhood. Finally.
Right.
But let's say, hurricane damages your roof. What are you putting in?
Slate.
Slate. Look at that beautiful gutter. I know it's a weird sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my
It
favorite-
is beautiful,
That's
though.
my favorite gutter. Look at the casino on that.
Yeah.
That's what?
Copper.
All copper. Or brass. Even more money, brass even.
Yeah.
Copper or brass. Yeah.
Oh.
Copper gutter. I've been
Oh.
watching them do it because we had a little bit of hurricane damage here in the quarter last year.
Yeah, there's a
Hurricane
piece. There's a
Ida.
piece of fresh copper.
I see
Yeah,
fresh
you
on
can
the
see
side,
it.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
So look at the flashing. It's all
Yeah.
yeah, buddy. When it's sunny, it's blinding. It'll
Yeah.
patina within 3 months.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, in the rain that we get here, it doesn't take long. But yeah, they've been putting it. Oh yeah, they put that roof in one day. It was crazy. It was so cool.
Oh wow.
So it's preserved and like they mean it. And
good.
on top of this, let's say your cousin Vinny does gutter work, and you're like, well, he can put it down. I mean, that's his business. That's what he does for a living. No. It has to be an approved list of contractors. Now he can go through the process of becoming approved through the Food Correct Commission, which would actually behoove him if he's that good.
Yeah.
Because then you're on that approved list, and they charge you more money. So it's really, really expensive to buy
Yeah.
and maintain. Now you asked me about why are the shutters were closed, and I was like, people probably don't live there. So here's the really crazy thing. Over the past, really 10 years, like this is really quick, like super quick. I've noticed that you see all the balconies where the people have all their stuff up,
Yeah.
and they're very individual and quirky, right? That used to be the whole French Quarter. And every year I'd walk through here doing my tours and I would see this. Now this one's actually for sale, by the way.
The corner
But
one?
you see how it's all closed up?
Yeah.
Which is what you were noticing.
Yeah.
It's all closed up. It's all closed up. Now usually the first floor is always closed up because otherwise you're looking right in their house.
Yeah. Hello.
And we're all voyeurs. So they usually
Even
have
if
it,
you don't wanna
they only
be.
have it open on the second and third floor. So the census finally came out. I couldn't wait. The 2020 census came out late 2021. Pandemic, right? But it finally came out, and I was correct that nobody lives here anymore. Well, not quite. So back in the 90s, the population of the French Quarter, because I looked it up, was about 7,000 people. Today, 3,500.
Wow.
It's literally half.
Why all the vacancy?
So I started asking people on my tour, because people always ask me. And I would say, does anybody know? Because I've been on the internet and I can't figure it out. Like, it's not like it's some kind of common knowledge. And I finally had people on my tour cotton me into what's going on. Corporate ownership.
Oh.
So
That's not.
corporate, and this is nationwide. No, this is not just New Orleans. And then, so one guy was like corporate ownership, and then I'm actually can prove it. So we're gonna go around the corner. I'm gonna show you something. He said corporate ownership, and I'm like, okay. And he says, yeah, so it's not only just an investment, right? It's like a tax haven. And I don't know finance. I don't know how at all. So I'm not really. And then, but I was like, why don't they run it out? Like, I don't get it. So fine, own it. Like, that's whatever. The thing about corporations, I will say this. I know hundreds of corporations who own these buildings, but they have a lot of money.
They have a money to keep them nice, right?
And so they put a lot of money into maintaining it.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, this is for sale right now for $3.7 million.
Wow. Yeah, I was going to say, I think.
That's not.
Seems fair.
And then you have to afford it, right?
Do you think there's apartments in there?
Yes.
Yeah. It's a nice old building. Look at it. It's all pretty.
They still have it. So this is your regular building permits, and this is the Correct Commission.
Oh.
Okay? And this is the new salmon. So look at the the owner.
Hooray, right? Or is
So-
the owner? I can't read that.
It's an LLC.
Oh.
So as a tour guide who's always on the streets, I've been looking at these signs because it tells you who owns these buildings.
Right.
And there's another website you can go to, by the way, that this other guy says, here, check this website out. You just put the address in and it'll tell you who owns it.
Yeah.
Because then they run it off as a business license.
Yeah.
And I was like,
And you still own it. It's an asset.
that, my friends, is why we have a housing shortage. I don't know that actually, but
No, but that's like the population is cut in half.
so there are, yeah, there's half the population, and they're just not rent, they're not available. And then Airbnbs are not allowed here
Aha.
in the French Quarter. I mean, I think they're still out there,
Probably somewhere.
but it's not that many because they are really strict. The Victory Commission is something else. And they have a lot of power. They have state law behind
They'll
them.
take your property maybe.
Cool house.
And it dates to the 1920s.
Force
Yeah,
the
it
sale.
looks like a
So,
typical
so this is the Americans tearing down historic buildings and building, which is why it doesn't have that old Spanish law.